Simulation theory is a theoretical hypothesis that says what people perceive as reality is actually an advanced, hyper realistic computer simulation, possibly overseen by a higher being. Welcome to the Alien Probe podcast. It is Saturday, February 25th, 2023. I'm Doug. Joining me today, Hollywood Robert. I've had a cold for like 2 weeks.
Oh man.
Well, I haven't had a cold. I've had this allergy thing. I don't know. It's not really cold, but
Do you
how
get it in the winter too? I thought it was in the spring.
it's you. It. I guess because we've had the weather, it's fired up this year early.
Yeah,
I've been
yeah.
coughing. I don't know.
Luckily, I haven't gotten sick, but I'm freezing my ass off down here. It's really cold.
Do you have heat in your place, though, right?
I've got one little heater. It's not great. I had a space heater, but I threw it out before I moved here, thinking that I wasn't going to need it. I've really been kicking myself about that.
I'm in L.A. I'm not going to need it.
Yeah, yeah. It was a nice one too. It was a really nice one that I had in Texas because I didn't have heat there, and it worked really well. But I was looking at it, and like the thing was, in Texas, I was on the 25th floor, and I had hauled down everything, and the last thing was the space heater, and I was like, I'm not fucking taking that. Let them have it. And the past few days, I've been really kicking myself and thinking about buying it again. It's definitely abnormal the weather we're having down here. I know some parts in the Bay Area are having snow and crap.
Santa
But like,
Cruz. Yeah.
yeah, it's just raining. Like the
Yeah.
major streets are all flooded. I went to Malibu this morning, almost hydroplaned into a station wagon.
Oh, no,
It's kind of a
great.
nightmare. Yeah.
You still got the truck, right?
Yeah, which is just a great vehicle to drive around LA, and let me tell you.
How's the parking there?
I've got a reserved parking spot one block over. The apartment came with a parking spot, but it's too small. It's underground, like 3 floors down, and my truck's lifted, so like it wouldn't make it down there. It's like I was thinking, a 911 would fit right in there, but I'm like, just
It-
fucking, you're not getting a 911. Just stick with the truck. So like I've got a parking spot that I pay. I don't even want to say how much I pay for it,
yeah.
but I feel like Seinfeld because they're always like talking about parking and paying for
Yeah.
parking and finding parking spots. It's never been an issue before. In LA before, it was just the residential streets you would have to move for street sweeping. Every Tuesday and Thursday, you'd have to alternate the sides. But now they've got this permit parking, and it's relatively easy to set up. You just send a utility bill, they send you a permit. And you could park right on the street where you live, and there's ample spots out here, but the permit is required, and to get the permit you have to have a California registration, and my truck's still registered in Texas. It's a brand new truck, so I know registering in California is going to cost a fortune, and I'm just not quite ready to put down that cash yet.
Yeah, everything's expensive here. Why did you come back anyway? I love having you out here, but
I honestly, at the end, all sorts of things were going wrong, and I just realized, Texas really isn't for me. For me, Austin's a little overrated. Dallas is cool. I thought about going to New York. I spent some time on the East Coast, but in the end, I had stayed here for a really long time, and I missed it. And
yeah,
and I was like, you know what? That regardless of why I moved here originally, this was my home for like a really long time, and I miss it. The girls here are prettier, skinnier, and there's just way more stuff. Texas has like a lot of barbecue. I had like a lot of bars that were within walking distance. But overall, like sitting there for like a year and a half, I was like, this really isn't where I want to spend the rest of my life.
but you gonna do any stand up? You gonna get back to that?
Yeah, yeah, I'm actually working on some new stuff right
Good.
now.
That's good to
Yeah.
hear. So simulation theory, sir. You had brought this to the table. Well, back Bill. I know you, Bill. It was like, oh no, I want to do it. So it's like, well, you win. So, so, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I've been thinking, the teasing myself about the idea of simulation theory for a really long time before I even knew that it was an actual thing. You know that I used to work for Maxis, which is the developer of the game The Sims. I worked on the original Sims, and some of the original expansion packs for the game. And, we would sometimes just shut out all the lights in the office and we would just be working, playing The Sims, and just kind of going through it. I was like, this is really very similar to how I live my life in a lot of different levels. I wonder if it's possible that we're in some kind of advanced version of The Sims and someone's just watching us kind of go about our day and maybe interfering in certain ways and watching the free will kind of take over. And it always kind of stuck with me. And then I encountered the actual theory, which, a lot of people talk about. Philip K. Dick, his themes for a lot of his books kind of went around the concept of what is reality and our perception of reality versus what could be actual reality. And there's a guy, a philosopher and scientist named Nick Bostrom, who in the early 2000s actually started publishing papers and works on the idea of simulation theory. And the easy kind of way to describe it is, if you accept the fact that our computational power is going to increase, tenfold, 20-fold, 50-fold every certain amount of years, which, I mean, it's pretty obvious that it is happening. You can accept the fact that eventually we will have the computational power to create a simulation that would be indistinguishable from reality. Now, if you accept that truth, which is actually pretty easy to accept if you really think about it, then the idea that we're the first race to be able to create this simulation is actually pretty low. In fact, there's a higher chance that we're already living in a simulation and we're merely recreating what's already been done. Now, the hows and the whys, we're not really there yet. It really is kind of a philosophical theory, but there are weird things that kind of happen in the in the world that make you think, like the basketball animation thing that I sent you, where the players are like doing identical movements and stuff. It's just every now and then something pops up where you're like, that's not quite right, and maybe we're just brains in a vat somewhere, or pieces of software. It kind of opens up interesting, like, spiritual theories too, like there would be a scientific explanation for the afterlife, and maybe reincarnation is merely taking the grain of a soul and merely plopping it in another body. If we're software, we can already kind of do something similar. It's definitely way more basic than what would be like a full simulation theory, but if you really think about it, it's pretty easy to wrap your head around.
So Debbie still plays The Sims. I don't do it, but she'll show them if she doesn't fire the thing up, she goes on, and then they're upset and they throw up.
You can make them do all sorts of stuff. And when I'm having really bad times, in my life, I'm thinking, is there somebody that's just fucking with me up there? Like, just making me do all sorts of weird shit? Like, I don't really get it.
Well, I was kind of going, you can unplug, it's like you can unplug yourself by committing suicide. I was like going all kinds of dark, you know what I mean? It's, why do people do that? Why do people, all these mass murders, all these mass shootings, all these, and they pick people up, and sometimes they ask, why did you do this? And sometimes it's, I don't know. So it's kind of like, was it a simulation? I mean, I don't want to go, but in a simulation, maybe it's just something. Is it an alien civilization? But they say that quantum computing, in order to do universes, I mean, you'd have to have more atoms or whatever than there is in the entire universe to actually do a simulation such as we would be experiencing today. But if you think about it, it's the Matrix. I mean, that's the ultimate, simulation. And they were using, what was it? They were using the bodies to make energy, I guess. They kept them alive. That was the premise of the movie, and then they found a way out of it. I haven't watched that in years, and all of a sudden I got into this and I said, I may want to rewatch that just, because it's
First one's
related.
great. All the other ones
Yeah,
suck. I really like
yeah.
the first one, but they really go off on kind of a
They
weird spiritual tangent that just doesn't really work for me.
they milked it. They
Yeah.
milked it pretty hard. But if you think about it, all these, these things that keep appearing, I don't want to drag UFOs in it, but I will. These things that are appearing randomly that we can't figure out, maybe this is a glitch or something, in the simulation,
Well,
right
it
now.
could be a glitch. Yeah, it could be a glitch. My theory about it is if they are related, when we have game like when we have the closest thing we have to like what we're talking about is what's called an MMO, which is a massively multiplayer online game. And these kind of worlds are just that. They're worlds. You create a character, everyone's different, but it's essentially like an RPG and you go out in that world. Now, there are people that work for the company that are fixing it, handling complaints. They're working to resolve bugs, and these are called admins essentially. And these admins have enhanced powers within the game. They have the ability to delete people. They have the ability to create items out of nothing. They can travel in ways that the standard players can't travel.
They're God.
So
Are
kind
they
of
are they God, Robert?
well,
They're
linking it
God.
together, maybe our concept of God is essentially an admin. Maybe these are just maybe aliens are monitoring the situation from computers, but every now and then they've got to strap in and actually get down into the simulation and do some tests on cows or whatever. A big part of that, essentially is my gaming background and kind of trying to bridge those two worlds. But it is interesting what you brought up before that scientists now saying the computational power required is this, that, and the other thing. I kind of take that stuff with a grain of salt. There was a time when scientists said flying would be
Yeah.
impossible. There's no way it can happen. So, science is never. I never just trust the science because if you look at history, science has been fucking wrong so many times.
Yeah.
We're constantly going back to the table and kind of having new ideas about things. And yeah.
This is why we're, having trouble with. They're going to have to change history. The archaeologists now, they have to face the fact that, if the Ancient Apocalypse. Did you ever watch that? Where they're figuring.
I did a little. I thought it was a little dry compared to like.
It is. The guy is. But
the guy's really. I listened to him on Joe Rogan too. I was like, God, this guy is so boring.
Yeah, it's he is, but he we found. I don't know if I sent you the thing where they found where that they have the in the Sahara Desert where they found where the ancient civilization was there. And, not 10,000 years ago. I always try to get my head around the actual timing of everything. So, Atlantis, they virtually found Atlantis in the Sahara Desert, and it's got the rings. I'll send you the link. It's interesting. It's not too, extensive, but they used to see it from space. And they didn't know that's what. I mean, obviously they're not sure. It's in a really violent area of Africa, where you get your head cut off if you do anything wrong.
Guys like us probably wouldn't fit in very well.
Now we can't just visit there and start digging around. So they're having trouble getting in there. I saw a show where they literally couldn't. They couldn't get in. They just couldn't get in there. So, but there's, you can fly over it and things. I mean, eventually, I suppose, if somebody paid the right person off, they could get in there and dig it around. But Atlantis was supposed to have a, advanced civilization, more advanced than us now, and that's the theory. And but it had the three, the 4 or 3 rings, and then the canals in them. And the canal that went out, you can just see the remnants of it, and it's It's really cool. But yeah, and this guy didn't talk about that yet. I mean, I haven't seen the whole thing he made.
One of the biggest things for the ancient civilization theory that I found intriguing is the Sphinx. And another guy who's kind of
Mm,
related to Graham Hancock, who's the ancient Armageddon or whatever guy, is he's like a geologist, I think. He's a professor. I don't remember which college, but it's a prestigious one. And he found evidence of erosion that was far older than the Sphinx is supposed to be. So he's basically proved that the Sphinx is way older
yeah,
than we thought it was, and that maybe it had a different head at some point and it was recarved into what it looks like now. And I thought that was really interesting too. It is kind of intriguing that we have like the UPAs that pop up, the out of place artifacts like the
yeah,
Baghdad battery and stuff like that keep popping up, and the scientists just dismiss it like almost like it doesn't exist. They don't want to discuss this.
yeah. There's a lot of things that are coming up that they can't figure out. And again, mainstream archaeologists are fighting it tooth and nail because they don't want to change the history books. And so they're just going with, what was written originally years ago, back in like,
Yeah.
you know, uh, way by the Indiana Jones
Yeah.
archaeologist is like, we
Can't
wrote
wait for
this.
the new movie, by the way.
What's that?
I can't wait for the new movie, by
Oh,
the way. I'm
isn't he
super
getting a
pumped.
little old for this?
It's Harrison Ford, man. He was awesome. He was like one of the coolest parts of the new Star Wars. He's still a great actor.
Yeah, it was sad to see him go.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're gonna be see. You didn't see that movie yet, Cocaine Bear.
Which Cocaine Bear. I was gonna see it today. I might see it tomorrow. The weather is just. I don't really want to go outside today.
Yeah, that's supposed to be a true story.
It's not a fully true story. Like he didn't go on a rampage, but there was a guy who dumped a bunch of cocaine and tried to parachute out of the plane to go after the cocaine, and he died. And then the bear came across, I guess, like a kilo and ate it, and then like died. Obviously, because that's what happens when you eat a kilo of cocaine. But like he wasn't a grizzly bear. He was like an American brown bear. Like he weighed less than me.
Yeah,
So imagine if I ate a kilo of cocaine, like I would die pretty quickly. So he didn't last long. He didn't go on a rampage or anything, but they did find him and they stuffed him. I think he's at a mall now where it happened. Like you can actually go see the actual
you
cocaine
can see
bear.
Cocaine
But
Bear.
it's still a fucking. I mean, I'm not really excited about movies that much anymore, but this one I'm pretty pumped about. Like I haven't even seen Ant-Man yet. I used to go see all the Marvel movies the day they came
Yeah,
out. They're kind of petering out. We're totally going off subject here, but they're kind
well,
of
that's what we
petering
do.
out, I think. They're not. I don't. There's something. Ever since Endgame, something's been missing from them, and like, I don't know. I think maybe comic book movies are on their way out finally.
Well, is it the multiverse? I mean, back to the subject of simulation theory. What about the multiverse? What do you think about that concept?
I think it's interesting. Um, One of the things going back to a supernatural theory is that Bigfoot is a trans-dimensional being, and that's why we never find bones or anything. It's an interesting theory, and it could be, they're one of the admins, and they, are active in forested areas or wilderness areas. And because not all Bigfoot sightings are just, oh, I saw this gorilla-looking thing. Some of them do have paranormal backdrops, and some of them are linked with UFO sightings. There have been totally outlandish ones that may or may not be true, but there is a lot to say that if they do exist, they definitely have a way to not leave any traces behind.
The if when you get a chance, check out Exhibition Bigfoot. It's a newer. I watched some of the older stuff, and I'm not of all the stuff like. I don't want to say believe in, but that I research and look into. That's the least believable of to me
Yeah.
of what's going on. So Corey at work, he says, you got to watch this, because I always told him I'm not doing Bigfoot. It's just like, they are not finding anything. They should put game cameras out there if they think this thing's wandering around, and then they shouldn't be any problem at all picking up some pictures of it. A game camera will just automatically click off, and then you collect the card, and then you have a picture.
Right. But I mean, even our technology now, Ring cameras, like law enforcement can detect and I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, it's all right.
They can detect and disable Ring cameras. It shouldn't be like this while they pull up. So if they pull up in front of a house, they can actually turn off the camera. For whatever reason, they have the ability to do that. So I would think that, going back to the interdimensional being theory, which I'm not totally on board with either,
yeah.
I think that they would have the technology to kind of get around that. If there are interdimensional beings that are flying around at the speed of light, I think that they would have a way to get around our game cameras.
Well, if they are there, they're going under the earth, which I've looked into the theories of, tunnels under the earth. Back when I was very young, I read a book called The Hollow Earth, where there was entrances in the North and the South Pole, and then, UFOs are flying in there, of course. And there was, actual civilizations in there from eons ago. But these things are either going under, if they're real. They're either going underground or, like you said, possibly interdimensional. And why did they just disappear? Because in the show, they make noise and then they go and then there's nothing there, Yeah. And the old Bigfoot shows are really horrible. I heard a rock.
The most famous Bigfoot video has been proven to be a fake, and that's the one that everyone still points to.
Yeah. So these guys are doing game cameras. They have really high tech. If you get a chance, watch this one, because it's a series. I think it's on its third season.
I think we watched it last time I was there.
Did we watch that one? Exhibition Bigfoot.
I remember the guy went to Nepal. I think it was
no. That was that guy. That was Josh. Whatever. That we watched that one, but that was a different one. That was an older one. This new one, that's where they found the Josh. I forget his last name, but that was good. And they went to Nepal and they found the actual skull cap of it.
But then they proved that it was fake, right? Am I remembering?
I'm not. Yeah, they didn't. Yeah, they weren't sure what it was. I don't think they said it was fake, but they couldn't figure out what it was.
Yeah, I think they did tests on it, and because he wanted to sell it, the guy, the Sherpa, and he wanted some exorbitant sum for it, and the guy did a test on it and brought it back and said it's not Bigfoot. If I'm remembering correctly, I think that's what it was.
But these guys, there's a team of, I think, 4 people. It's funny because the girl that's on it has got her, you can tell she's a scientist that's been all over the place, but you can tell she's big into the Botox. So it's kind of like, I go to Corey, this girl's like a clown. It's like, I can't, it's like, I don't know. It's weird, but.
Trust me, in Hollywood, I see them a lot. It looks bad. I don't understand why people do that.
That is one.
I'll just get old.
Yeah, let me get old. I'm not interested in, I don't know. It's
looking like a doll. They don't look normal.
No, and then they stretch their face and then, whatever. But anyway, so they've got 4 people, and then I just fear that I don't fear, but I don't want to get into it because it's just another Skinwalker Ranch. Oak Island. Have you ever? We've talked about those.
I can't stand. I love Ancient Aliens. I love the History Channel. That's the channel that I have on in the background when I'm working. So I have it on every day. Except they do these a lot of the time during the daytime TV, they do these marathons of their shows. And they do Ancient Aliens a lot, but every now and then they'll do an all-day Oak Island or all-day Skinwalker Ranch. And I'm like, there's no way. Especially, both of them are annoying in their own ways. Oak Island is just, we're digging a hole, and they just dig a fucking hole, and then every 3 episodes they find a piece of metal, and they all yell and shit. And it's like, how long are you going to do this? This
is button.
Ridiculous.
Found a button.
And the other one, yeah, a button. The other one, the Skinwalker Ranch one, I can't stand that blonde guy with the fucking accent, the Texas accent.
Travis Taylor. That Travis Taylor.
He's always fucking really pumped up about like nothing, and it just irks me. It's funny, they have, I'm sure you've seen this, but there's one part that I don't know if you saw in the special William Shatner episode of Ancient Aliens. Have you seen that one? There's a part where
Terror in the Sky. It's called Terror in the Sky.
Travis Taylor tries to interrupt Giorgio Tsoukalos, the Ancient Aliens guy.
Yeah.
And Tsoukalos like snaps at him and says, "Excuse me, I'm trying to finish a thought here." And I've seen it like 3 times, and it's fascinating to me because I'm always like, I wonder what's going on in the background of that because fucking Skinwalker and Oak Island are obviously hitching their post to the success of Ancient Aliens, even though they aren't nearly as good as shows. And I wonder if there's some resentment there for that. I don't know. It's just something that's always in the back of my mind. I overanalyze like interpersonal relationships and conversations, and it's kind of a weakness of mine because occasionally I take offense at things that maybe I overthink things. That's definitely something that interests me.
So I keep our conversation short. Don't read into it. Yeah, it's like, no, but Travis Taylor, Bill wrote a 2000. We talked a lot. In fact, every episode that would come out, we would dissect what they were doing because it was ridiculous science. They would do science, but they would stop short of actually doing anything. But Bill wrote a 2,000-word essay, which I didn't get to hear, about in defense of Travis Taylor. He was a scientist, and Bill said, I want to read this one. So he never read it, and I don't know where he probably had it in a computer somewhere, and I'll never get to see it. But it's he was, and there was another show. There's a backstory to Skinwalker. Brandon Fugel, who owns the company that is funding the Skinwalker thing. He brings in this they're Mormons, this, right? It's a Mormon thing. All those guys are Mormon.
Skinwalker?
Yeah. It's a big Mormon thing. Yeah, it's a big Mormon thing. Yeah.
Even weirder.
So he brings in a guy that he had was a researcher that has a podcast. And they talked about, the backstory of how it got, how he got interested. And this guy, Brandon Fugel's got a science fiction collection that you would kill for. It's really? Literally, he's got like movie props and things from like the Terminator, and it's badass. I mean, in books but he lives in this high class apartment in Utah. And he takes this black the black helicopter, and he flies in there, and they say a prayer before they land. And but the guy, this guy comes in. Well, this guy had talked a bunch of shit about Travis Taylor at some point in his podcast. So Travis Taylor he wouldn't go when they did, and it's
what a
I don't
baby.
know. Yeah, I don't want, but it would be cool to see him just bust out into a fight. But so he comes in and he flies in with Fugel and the pilot, and it stopped the episodes. There's a few episodes of this, and then there's one where he's going to stay the night by himself by the Homestead 2, they call it. There's a couple of old broken down houses, and he wants to just stay in like a tent, not like a tent, but in a tent. And by himself, and the security people are like, "You're not staying out there by yourself. We're going to have to be in the vicinity." But they found that all the weird stuff that happened when Bob Bigelow owned it, they had what's called a dino beaver. I know we're off track, but that's what we do.
That's all right.
The dino beaver, and there was a wolf that, oversized wolf that, attacked, and it didn't hurt anybody, but they shot it and it didn't die. It didn't, it just ran off. And, a thing that was in a tree. Well, what happened is Fugel came in. He said, none of that stuff ever happened. He said, You know, he says it's not. He straight up said it's. He said what it was Bigelow had his security team there, and they were afraid that he nothing ever happened. They were just there, and so they started making up shit. And that
Yeah, I've always found the Bigelow thing weird because it's my understanding that after Bigelow sold it, he didn't release any of his findings,
because there wasn't
which
any.
kind of
Yeah,
made it more mysterious. But I think anybody with common sense will be like, well, obviously he wants to get his money's worth if he's selling it.
yeah.
If he releases this information, everybody's gonna know it's bullshit.
But Fugel's seen things. I mean, he's seen. It's more paranormal, I think. I mean, now it's going. It's kind of going in the paranormal direction. And they're drilling. One thing that's intriguing is they drilled into this mesa, and then the guy hit something, and it wouldn't drill through. And this drill's supposed to go through anything, but they drilled through. They couldn't drill through it, so it's like, okay, we'll take the mesa down or do LiDAR. I mean, it pisses me off that they don't do. If you think something's in there, take LiDAR. Then you can see what's underground.
Yeah,
You
just take one of those fucking drills from Oak Island that they got laying around. And fucking tons of
take the Oak
machinery
Island.
just to
Yeah.
dig a fucking hole.
You
Jesus
should take the
Christ.
Oak Island drill, yeah, and drill down there. Is there a spaceship under there? But it's
Yeah.
the lack of evidence of any solid evidence. They'll see a UFO. That's one thing they do see. They see, UAPs flying around there. I'm just, we did a show with Doty, this guy Rick Doty, that he was in the military disinformation. He was in one of the agencies. And he said that, yeah, we've reversed, they didn't really reverse engineer stuff, but we're flying their stuff, but we can't figure out the propulsion system. So on this one case, they developed they used one of our nuclear, like a small nuclear motor of some kind, and it would splay out nuclear stuff, but we have, there are UAPs, but are they flying now? Are they from the past? Nothing new is really, except these damn balloons. What do you think about these balloons?
I think the first one
Yeah.
was Chinese spy balloon, and the rest were hobby balloons.
Yeah, that's kind of what's coming out. Is some kid said I called the government and said it was mine.
Well, there's a lot of talk about the Ohio East Palestine spill. You heard about that?
No. Oh yeah,
You,
the train spill.
Yeah, and it happened right around the time that these balloons kept popping up. And so on the conspiracy side of things, if you're not up to speed, the idea is they kept these balloons that they knew were useless in the fucking news, so they didn't have to report this thing, which is actually turning out to be a lot worse than initially thought.
It killed
They've got
39,000 minnows, by the way.
Well, like that, and people's dogs, I guess, are dying.
Oh
Did
no,
you
I
hear
didn't
about
hear
this?
that.
Yeah, and like they keep having these videos of people going to creeks that are like really far away from the actual site because they burned the gas.
Yes.
They thought the best solution was to burn it off, and then they're throwing rocks in these rivers, and all of a sudden you can see these huge like chemical circles where the rock impacts the fucking river. It's really weird.
Yeah, they thought
And
it was going to blow up, I guess is the theory, and they said the best way to deal with it is to drain it out and light it on fire.
I mean, which could be true, but it's still
Bad.
It still could have had substantial impact on the environment, and it does. Because at first I wasn't like, oh my god, spy balloons are everywhere. My reaction was, why the fuck do we keep hearing about these balloons? Like, what is really going on?
Yeah.
Because I don't think there's Chinese spy balloons everywhere, but like it definitely felt like something was going on. And then I heard about this, and everybody like in the area was like, I'm here, the news aren't here, nobody's reporting on this, what the fuck is going on? And then people started putting two and two together, and that's the conspiracy theory right now, that it was a cover-up.
Oh, yeah. There's something shiny.
Yeah.
We're gonna
Yeah.
look at it. Well, one of the things on that, and they haven't found the wreckage of the other. There was 4 total, and
Well, it's probably disintegrated if it's a hobby balloon.
well, yeah, and one pilot said that he flew by it and he couldn't. It was a cylinder, and but it could be a balloon still. You know, it just depends. They can make them whatever size, whatever shape you want to make a
Yeah,
balloon.
and in like real UAP sightings and stuff, these craft are performing in ways that our conventional aircraft can't keep up with. They're, zooming around and they're defying physics.
Yeah,
Like when I hear, oh, the plane flew by it, I'm like, well, then it wasn't a fucking alien because like he wouldn't let him catch up. Like there's no way.
yeah, and a lot of those balloon things they fly by and they video it. You know, just going by the balloon, and it looks like the balloon's moving. It's really just sitting there. And
Yeah.
with the aircraft flying by makes it look like it's moving the opposite direction at a very fast pace, the pace of the plane.
Yeah.
So that's not, I mean, I want to believe it's a UAP, obviously. But, and there's this fake pictures of the wreck. And these planes, they had their gun cameras could take pictures of these. I've seen no other pictures of any of the other balloons, only the alleged Chinese. Every time I say this to somebody, you don't know it was Chinese.
No,
Okay.
the Chinese took the first one. They accounted for.
Did they
said
admit
that's
that it
ours.
was him?
Yeah, but it flew off course, and then they were like, "You guys are fucking surveilling us all over the place." And they're like, "No, that's Chinese disinformation." I mean, I don't fucking know. I don't obsess about this stuff anymore.
No.
I'm just waiting for the bombs to fall. Like, I don't need to know how it's gonna happen. I just feel like we're done. It's just a matter of time. Everybody's either gonna keel over from
Yeah.
vaccines or nuclear missiles. It's just a matter of time. Might as well just
Bill
pay
said,
bills.
"Yeah, Bill." I said, "Dude, aren't you worried about nuclear war and all that?" He goes, "Ah, just let it happen." He goes, "I'm so tired of hearing about it. Just launch them." I go, "Yeah, they're going to be wandering around. You got to eat your neighbor for subsistence."
Well, I
It's
mean,
like
we're it's gonna be done anyway. Like, and it'll be quick.
the simulation. Maybe whoever's running our simulation is just going to press the button.
Well, they do have those reports. I'm sure you've heard this too, where like they were doing simulation nuclear strikes, and this has happened more than once, and everything turned off. Like the aliens were like, "You're
Yeah.
not going to go that far." So,
Yeah.
and who knows? Maybe because Putin was threatening for a while,
Yeah.
and then he stopped. I wonder if they tried to do something and everything just got shut off.
Yeah, this is the stories are that, once we try to launch something, then they just disable it. They've disabled our, where they're underground in Montana and things. And they said they flew over and they've disabled those from time to time, when they feel like it. So, I mean, it's this whole, I don't know. It's just, I believe there's something. It's UAPs and they're doing something. I literally don't know.
Yeah.
Or is there, are they already here? Did they? I've got. I'm reading a book now about the planet Serpa. You would think this is total science fiction, but allegedly, in the '60s, after Roswell. 47 was Roswell, but in the 60s, we did an exchange program with this planet Serpa, which is within the Zeta Reticuli system. I sound like a real nerd now. Then the Zeta Reticuli system, where we think the grays are, and we call them Ebens. They have a name. They call them Ebens.
Really?
And so we sent 12 scientists there, and then we did an exchange program. So I'm starting to read this book. Debbie and I are probably we're going to do segments of it. We're going to read some of it, and then we're going to do a segment on it. And then to talk about it. It's intriguing. I was on the internet, of course. And then I bumped into the story about, what are they already here? Are they, what are they, or are they us from the future? It's, I read the book. I don't know if you've heard the show, but I read the book, Identified Flying Objects.
Uh-huh.
And that is where we come from. Actually, you and I don't know if we've talked about this. the listeners are probably tired of hearing about it. But one of my theories is that these things are us from the future. This is where what we've evolved into. They really aren't from another planet, or we were from another planet, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, there's things about the moon that are weird.
Yeah, we only see one side of it. We don't
Yeah.
have any idea.
I mean,
Apparently, China went over there. Did you hear about that?
Yeah.
China went to the dark side of the moon.
yeah. By the time we get there, they're going to have a Luxor there, and they're going to be gambling. We screw around so much. We screw around so much with this Artemis thing.
Yeah.
I believe Artemis, but it's going to be a couple of years by the time they do the man. They're going to have 3 people go, and they're not going to land then either. This next phase is where we will go around the moon in the ship, and then make sure that they can be. They've already proven that the thing will work. I don't know why we can't just do the mission. Elon Musk, who by the way, Elon is a huge proponent of simulation theory. He says it's millions to one that this isn't a simulation theory.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you put Elon and SpaceX on this, he would already have landed there. I mean, he's already working on a lander.
Well, we need to colonize. I don't understand. It feels like we should be doing experiments on the water. That's where we should start. It would be far cheaper than doing experiments in space about creating colonies with bubbles and shit. I just read an article a couple of days ago that says our research right now suggests that astronauts couldn't be on Mars for more than 4 years without suffering severe radiation damage to the point that it probably would kill them. So it's not like all we need to do is get the people over to Mars. We need to be experimenting with off-planet colonization, and I think the moon is perfect. Why we haven't taken advantage of this, because we've already allegedly landed on the fucking thing. Why we didn't immediately start sending people up there and building something that could be far more permanent than what we've done so far. The fact that the space race got so far in the 60s, and since then, it's been a fucking sleep show. Boring. Who knows what kind of dumb experiments about grasshoppers and shit they're doing in space. Put a bubble on the moon, put some people in it, get started. That's what we need to do.
As far as radiation, they have shielding. I mean, that shouldn't necessarily be a problem. But remember, that side is always facing the sun. It's always facing away. May not be facing the sun, but is always facing away from Earth. So, I mean, it's like they say, I mean, if you look into that, I've been on every rabbit hole there is, it seems, but, they say there's structures over there. They said it had people on it. It had something on it. There's one theory where the moon is hollow, and it was used to carry a civilization through a wormhole. And they found our planet, like we're looking for other exoplanets, and they found a place to put their people because their planet was dying, and they drug them here, eons ago, and then they unloaded them and sent them down to the surface. But before they did that, the moon had the structures on it, but they set the moon in such a way that it's always pointing, you can't see the other side on purpose. And then also the thing is that, it's freaking, if you look at the moon again, when we have a lunar eclipse, is, when the moon goes over the sun, solar eclipse, it's positioned perfectly around the sun, where it's not bigger and it's not smaller. It's exactly the size.
Right.
And they did a computation as to what the odds are that this thing could be specifically simulation theory, specifically the size of the sun when it goes across the sun, which is bizarre. There's a lot of bizarro things that happen. I mean, when you think about simulation theory and all the weird all the weird, and they say they can, if they were simulating, how this works, video game, you can run it forward and backwards. If
Yeah.
you're developing, I'm sorry if you're not playing necessarily, but if you're developing a video game, you
Yeah.
can make it do, oh, I don't like
Anything.
that. Yeah, I don't like that. And you run it, and the things inside it wouldn't necessarily know
No,
that
because
you're
you just
changing it.
update you just update their brain with that history, and they
It's
just
automatic.
keep on.
It
Yeah.
it's automatic. It doesn't. It's not like you have to do anything. It would automatically. This shit could be happening all day long.
Well, that's why. Have you heard? There's a fucking. What is the name of it? Oh God. Hold on. Give me a second. This is really interesting. The Mandela effect.
No, what's that?
The Mandela effect is a phenomenon that that people are reporting on, especially like in like websites like Reddit and stuff, where certain people remember history remember one fact of history one way when it's actually different in the grand scheme of things. A simple example is the Berenstain Bears. There's a set amount of people who from their childhood remembered it spelled differently, but the rest of the people are like, no, it's always been like this. There's also an example of a movie that came out called Shazam starring Sinbad in the 80s that a certain subset of people from that day remembered coming out and remember seeing the VHS, but it doesn't exist anymore, or it never existed.
Oh,
So
wow.
the idea is that there's some kind of like ghost in the machine or some kind of mental fog that certain people experience if they are making those changes.
Right.
That remnants kind of live on.
That's
It's called
incredible.
it's called Mandela effect.
Why
You
is
should
it
check it out.
Mandela? Is it named after something?
No, yeah, a lot of people remember Nelson Mandela dying in the 90s.
Yeah.
And
that's
that was one of the first ones, but he didn't die until way later. If he might still be alive. I think he's dead now.
but they
But yeah,
remember him dying.
that's what it was named after.
So what? Okay, so they're trying to prove. There are scientists out there that are actively trying to prove that we're in a simulation. Is this dangerous? Do you think? I mean, what happens if we
No.
all of a sudden figure out, oh, we are in?
I think if it reached any point of danger, then whoever's running it, if they are still running it, would change it in a way that both of us are talking about so that we couldn't remember it. What's always fascinated me was back in the day with the older consoles like the Nintendo or the Nintendo Entertainment System or the Sega Genesis. We used to have this add-on called the Game Genie. Do you remember this?
I remember the name. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was this thing that you would plug the video game cartridge into. It was almost like a secondary cartridge, and then you would plug both pieces into the console. And the Game Genie overwrote the code in the game. So you would have a book of codes, like, for example, Super Mario Brothers, unlimited lives. So you would go to the Game Genie menu, you would plug in the code, and then in Super Mario Brothers, you would have unlimited lives.
Wow.
The most fascinating thing about simulation theory for me is maybe trying to figure out some way to hack the system to fly to
Yeah.
live forever, all these sort of things. And maybe that's what CRISPR is. I don't know.
What's
Or CRISPR could be the first part of that. That's the gene editing technology. You heard about the Chinese scientist who used CRISPR? He was sentenced to 3 years in prison by the Chinese government because he modified the DNA, and this is true, of 2 infants so they can never contract HIV.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this.
And they didn't like
look
that?
it up. And they didn't like it. Well, it's against the
Yeah.
we as a planet are forbidding that kind of work right now. And his viewpoint was why, if we really understand this, we could basically
Right.
control our evolution. There were certain genetic codes that once removed led to better regenerative Jesus Christ.
Regenerative,
Brain healing. Like if you suffered major brain trauma,
right.
if they ran you through CRISPR, it would help you heal and regenerate your brain capacity.
What
I'm not an expert on this, but it is interesting.
what is CRISPR? I've never heard of
Yeah,
it.
I'm not. It's CRISPR. You'll have to check it out. I'm not an expert on it, but yeah, it exists.
That's interesting. I don't know. Yeah, we make ourselves fly.
Yeah, something. I mean, birds can fly, so it's possible, right?
Well, that's
Yeah,
yeah, Jeanette. Well, that's another thing about what they're surmising is going on with
hybrids.
yeah that the aliens are already the aliens are already in the government but where we have a relationship with them.
Right.
And do you realize how many people go missing every year and that are never found? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
it's they say they were allowing them to take certain amount of people, right? Not
Yeah.
specifically, but
Like we have a choice.
yeah, they're taking whoever, and then they're taking them to places like in New Mexico, Los Alamos, and they had a place up there on a Archuleta Mesa that they had 7 levels, and on the seventh, below the seventh, well, seventh was Nightmare Alley, they called it, where they would do the gene things like you're talking about, modifications where people would have bat wings and crap like that, and then below 7 was alien only. And then we broke in. I mean, it's a fascinating story. There was a science fiction book that I read about this, and there was a guy out there that actually said that he was boring and he bored accidentally. I don't know if he accidentally bored into one of they have these, like Bart running through these
Yeah.
things, and then there would be skirmishes down there where the aliens would come in with laser guns, and allegedly this dude got his finger shot off and had he was hit by this laser, and they got special forces in there, and they had this giant
Holy shit.
giant mini war down there where 66 people got killed. And it's just, I mean, this one of the it's just they always say, well, the government's like, hey, made that up, everybody. And then they had an ex-wife that after he died, and he died mysteriously too. He was like murdered or something happened. So it's when you think about these weird things that go on,
Going back to that, if this actually just happened too, true story, you can Google it. 5 independent scientists that were on their way on a plane to test East Palestine, Ohio, their plane crashed. They all died.
I did not know about that.
There's
Was that in the big news?
No, but it's definitely confirmed. It's in the news, but it's not like being broadcast.
Why would
like
they?
a lot of these things,
Yeah,
a lot of these things, you can find out and you can prove are actual facts. You just have to dig deeper than like, oh well, I saw it on the Today Show. Like those kind of major broadcasts, they're just not even reporting on it at all.
Yeah, you have to kind of dig down the rabbit holes and find out, the things that have as much as you can think that they really went on.
Yeah.
But it's you get like Neil deGrasse Tyson, and they got together they had this thing called there was a debate on whether or not simulation theory was real, but they tried to they discussed it. They had Tyson and some other scientists, and he's not a supporter of the theory that this could be happening. But I
don't like that guy anyway.
Well, he's always it's just the fact that he's okay. He just with
He's
him,
kind of a bummer.
He always is the one that there's no aliens. He can't. There's no aliens or UFO. There's none of that going on. It's from what I've seen of him, when I talked about this stuff to other people. Do you ever randomly ask somebody if they believe in UFOs or extraterrestrials?
No, but it's coming up in conversation more and more now. I think people, and maybe this is all part of it, all the movies that we've had, all the little inklings we're getting, maybe the government is behind it, because the fact of the matter is, in the 60s, if all of a sudden aliens were real, it would flip everything upside down.
Yeah.
Everything that we question about religion, spirituality, purpose, etc., etc., would totally be destroyed. But by slowly acclimating society to it,
Yeah.
it would be easier. But the question is, how long is that acclimation period going to be? Is it going to be within our lifetimes? Is it going to be 1,000 years? It's a little frustrating.
Well, they're taking their time, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And I've
Well,
got
I mean, we're not doing a very good job of showing that we're prepared either. We're still a bunch of fucking raving lunatics.
hillbillies.
Yeah.
What do you think about the Ukraine war? We'll do a political
I don't
corner.
know, man. I don't know.
Billions of dollars.
Yeah, I think it's suspicious that all of our money is going to it. And what I find even more suspicious that no one seems to be talking about is all these connections to Ukraine that Biden had, especially, and again, this is all proven. Anybody can look this up, through Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden's son, or Hunter Biden himself, was on an advisory board for an energy company in the Ukraine. And, the conspiracy side of it is that indirectly Joe Biden was behind that too. And the Ukraine has been an afterthought in every American's mind up until essentially a year ago, when all of a sudden all this shit started happening. So it is weird that there's that connection that nobody seems to really question could or could not be connected to this war now.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, how's the homeless down there? I mean, in your area?
I live in a part of Hollywood that's very clean, very few homeless, very quiet. I think I've lived all over SoCal, and this is my favorite. It's the best for where I'm at personally. Like, I love it.
Yeah, I mean, do they keep the homeless from taking over the sidewalks and
Yeah, yeah, there's no tent cities, nothing like that. I
yeah.
occasionally see, a crazy person and he yells at me, but I mean, compared to how it is in, say, like Santa Monica and Venice, it's like night and day. It's so much cleaner here.
Oh, is it bad there in Santa Monica?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I left, was it's gotten really bad. The rent is ridiculous there, and they've got tent cities all near like the Venice border. There's on the Venice boardwalk, there's a lot of violence, a lot of people getting attacked and shit. It's pretty bad. I don't know. I don't want to go off on too big of a tangent. There's definitely reasons why, but West Hollywood, they keep it under wraps here. I'm also pretty close to a police station, so that might have something.
That probably doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, you don't necessarily have. They have, a lot of them are veterans. That's my main concern about what's going on. There's a lot of, at least, that's what they say. I don't know. I haven't ever taken a, but they, and they're here. They're down by the river. Debbie sees, he goes to the river every day, and there's there's an island, a little island in the middle of the river. The river's not that gigantic, but the American River, and they set up a tent city on the island, and she complains about it on social media, so she draws. I go, don't ever. I go, you shouldn't really do that. If you don't like it,
there's no winning. They're not going to be like, well, let's kick them off because this lady's complaining about it on Facebook.
People agree, and there's other people, and then they have phones because the people that live there respond to her.
Oh, wow.
She says, why don't you get a job, or why don't you get an apartment?
Jesus.
I go, you're making a big mistake. It doesn't matter. Why don't we try to help them? I just think, and I'd had this discussion with my sister a couple days ago, is that, I don't know why we're spending billions of dollars in doing this Ukraine thing. You'd think that would be able to get an organized effort.
Well, I know that having an ally in Ukraine gives us a strategic advantage, and we could put missiles there that would really fuck Russia up if things went south.
Yeah.
And I think that is Russia's main reasoning for taking back over the Ukraine, is the strategic advantage it would give to the West if it allied with the West. I don't read international news nearly as much as I used to, but that's my basic understanding of it.
It's wild. All right, you ready to wrap it up?
Yeah.
Through an
Great
hour.
talking to you as always, Dad.
All right, Robert, thanks for listening to the latest episode of the Alien Probe Podcast. We welcome questions, comments, and requests to alienprobepodcast@gmail.com. Visit us on Facebook. Check out our website, alienprobe.net. Twitter and Instagram at alienprobepod. Like and subscribe to YouTube, Alien Probe Podcast. It'll go right to the top. Thanks again to our senior producer, Robert Anthony, and Biff. See you, Biff.
Good boy.
Thank you, buddy.
All right.